Hey guys, welcome back to Bixby's Beer Reviews. Great to have you with me here again. Gonna get right into it. Today we got a beer from a brand new brewery to the BBR. This is Widowmaker Brewing out of Braintree, Massachusetts, a town which once towed and destroyed a car of mine on false pretenses. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about one of their wonderful new beers. This is Kameosa. It's a Japanese rice lager, a Kameosa. Also a Japanese word that I learned about today that refers to this possessed little jug you can see there on the label. It's usually filled with water or sake, likes to make mischief. Appropriate here because this is a Japanese rice lager that's actually been fermented with sake yeast, a very attenuative yeast. Now, you're probably familiar with Japanese rice lagers. I think most everybody's had, a Kirin Ichiban or an Orion somewhere here or there. And I think they tend to get a bad rap as sort of just very light, not interesting beers. And I think nothing could be further from the truth, because not only I think are these good and delicious beers to be drinking, but they're also very useful for a particular purpose. You might be wondering why I'm having a very light lager in the middle of a cold winter, and there's a reason. Sometimes you might hear me talk about a beer and say that I think it might be good with food, usually in a complimentary fashion, and that's because, a lot of the craft beers that we like, especially those big hazy IPAs, you're not going to have a big hazy IPA with a pot roast, or I don't know, maybe you are. There's a lot of freaks and sickos out there, so you can do what you want. But the point is, I would never do that because, one, it's not going to taste good as a combination, and two, you're going to lose a lot of the subtleties. But that's why I think Japanese rice lagers are so interesting and so useful. The reason I have this can of beer in my house is because I got sushi the other day, and I think that there is nothing better to go, not just with sushi, but with a wide variety of foods, and especially both subtly and strongly favored foods, than dry, light lagers. Reason being, let's take sushi again for an example. There are a lot of very subtle, very intentional flavors and combinations going on in there that could just get completely wiped out by even a moderately hoppy pale ale, or let alone something with some darker malts in it. And what makes these beers so beautiful here is that not only do they not overwhelm the flavors of the sushi that you're eating, but the high carbonation and the lightness actually almost sort of cleans your palate between bites. I think of it, not unlike the pickled ginger you might get with your sushi or your sashimi. So I think it's a style where not only is the underlying beer delicious as beer, but it's very useful to kind of have in your craft beer toolkit. So let's crack this one open, take a look. One of the reasons I think that rice lagers maybe get something of a bad rap is that I think most people know a lot of American light macros will use a lot of rice and a lot of corn in their grist, because it'll contribute something for the yeast to eat, but yeast will ferment rice sugars, I don't know exactly what they're called, almost completely out of the beer, so you get something that's very dry, and they won't contribute much flavor. So perfect for making light, flavorless, fizzy beer if that's how you want to use it. But of course, rice is just a tool. It can be used for good or for evil. So let's take a look at what we got here. Of course, the hallmark of the Japanese light lager is the high carbonation. Look at those bubbles. Beautiful, gigantic bubbles, giving us a nice, light, fluffy, and very persistent head here. You can also tell one of the lightest beers you're ever going to see. Of course, it's not made 100% with rice, but really light grains are involved in here. So it's a beautiful looking beer. Let's go ahead and give it a smell. So this has a very light but very surprisingly complex aroma. The first thing I get is a very light, slightly noble hop aroma. It's certainly not the imposing pepperiness that Saaz can sometimes bring. It's much more towards the Hallertau, the Spalt, where you get a little bit more of sort of fresh meadow, a little bit of a grassiness almost to it in a very soft way. But it also has just a little bit of a kind of malt sweetness to it. It's not the cereal or cracker malt sweetness that you'd get with even a very light Pilsner. It's something almost a little bit more even, I would say, honeyed than that. So it's a very light, very delicate aroma, but it certainly brings some complexity to it, and it's very, very pleasing. So that's what it smells like. Let's go ahead and give this one a taste. Dry, crushable, but again with a surprisingly complex depth to its flavors. The first thing I noticed right off the bat is that delightful soda pop fizziness. again, it cleans the palate. So whether you're having very subtle food that you don't want to have overwhelmed, or I think equally whether you're having very spicy food where the food itself would overwhelm most of the character of the beer, you get something that's perfectly matched to a wide variety of food contexts just by the mouthfeel that carbonation brings. But here again, this isn't just a beer to be used for something else. This is a beer that has its own merits. And first off, it's that sweetness again that we got on the aroma, a little bit honeyish, and I would say even almost a little bit towards Cheerios. But another couple interesting things here. This has a nice clean bitterness to it from the hops, which I think is really well used in the carbonation to give it a kind of a zing. And it also does have just a little bit of hop character to it. Again, that slightly meadowy, noble hop aroma comes through a little bit on the flavor, but it's not really anything forward because it's such a light beer. But to the extent it is, it's a malt forward beer, and it brings a very pleasing light malt complexity to go with it. It's very high carbonation, it's dry finish, and it's well balanced hop bitterness. So all around a very, very good beer just to drink on its own, and one that I would certainly look forward to crushing many of by itself when the temperature heats up again here in the mid-Atlantic region. Of course, for right now, it is very, very, very cold out. But of course, you can avoid all that if you order delivery sushi, and if you do, you better have something like this on hand to make your meal complete. So thanks for checking out this very interesting, fun beer with me. Big thanks to Widowmaker, it's very good beer. Looking forward to checking out some more of your beers, as long as I don't have to drive there and get my car towed again. I know that wasn't you guys, but I'm still gonna hold it against the town. And I look forward to seeing you next time here on the BBR. Bye now.